In 1958, one man decided that reality itself was negotiable. Economics, nature, and human lives were expected to fall in line. Welcome back to the human scar. We're doing what we always do, taking an investigative look at humanity's crimes, dirty secrets, and the tyrants who caused them. Today, I'm opening a file that makes the nightmares of most dictators look like amateur hour. We are going to talk about a time when one man decided he could rewrite the laws of economics, biology, and physics just by willing it so. Imagine a government telling you that the key to becoming a superpower is to melt your cooking pots in your backyard and wage war against small birds. It sounds like a dark comedy sketch. But for the people of China in 1958, it wasn't a joke. It was the beginning of the end. This is the story of the Great Leap Forward. Let's set the scene. It's 1958. Mao Zedong looks at the Soviet Union, looks at the United States, and looks at Great Britain. And he gets jealous. He decides China needs to industrialize. Fast. He didn't want to wait decades. He wanted to do it in a few years. He called it the Great Leap Forward. The goal? To surpass Britain's steel production in 15 years. Now, usually, to make steel, you build factories, you train engineers, you create infrastructure. But Mao? He had a different idea. He had the people. Mao ordered the entire country to stop what they were doing and build backyard furnaces. I'm not talking about industrial plants. I'm talking about mud ovens in the middle of rice paddies. Farmers who knew everything about growing crops and zero about metallurgy were told to make steel. And here is the punchline that isn't funny. To feed these furnaces, they didn't have ore. So, the party officials forced villagers to melt down their tools: woks, spoons, door handles, farming plows. They destroyed the very tools they needed to survive to create lumps of useless, brittle pig iron. It was garbage, but nobody dared tell the chairman. But bad steel wasn't enough. Mao decided he was smarter than Mother Nature too. He launched the Four Pests campaign. He identified the enemies of the state: mosquitoes, flies, rats, and sparrows. Why sparrows? Because Mao saw them eating grain seeds. In his mind, sparrows were thieves stealing the people's food. So, he mobilized the entire population. Millions of Chinese citizens took to the streets, banging drums, pots, and pans for days on end. They kept the birds in the air, terrified, until they literally dropped dead from exhaustion. It was a total victory. The sparrow population was decimated. But here is the thing about ecosystems. They bite back. Sparrows don't just eat grain. They eat locusts. With the birds gone, the locust population exploded. It was biblical. The insects swarmed the fields and ate everything. Mao had effectively destroyed the country's natural pest control right before the harvest. And remember those farming tools? They were all melted down in the backyard furnaces. The trap was set. Now, you'd think this is where the government hits the brakes, right? Wrong. This is where the political rot sets in. In a totalitarian system, the truth is treason. Local officials knew the harvest had failed, but they were terrified of being purged. So, what did they do? They lied. They reported record-breaking harvests to Beijing. They claimed the fields were overflowing with grain. Mao, sitting in his palace, believed the lie. He even increased grain exports to the Soviet Union to pay off debts, believing China had food to spare. They were shipping food out of the country, while the people who grew it were eating tree bark, leather, and clay, just to stop the hunger pangs. If you tried to leave your village to find food, you were arrested. If you hoarded a handful of rice, you were beaten. It turned the entire country into a prison without walls. By the time the madness ended in 1962, the silence over the Chinese countryside was deafening. Historians still argue over the numbers. Was it 15 million dead? 30 million? Some researchers say it was as high as 45 million people, starved to death. Not because of a drought, or a war, or a plague, but because of bad policy and the terrifying inability to say no to a tyrant. It was the greatest man-made famine in human history. This is the heavy price of unquestioned authority. When truth is censored, people die. It's that simple. We look back at this now and wonder how it happened. But ask yourself, how many times do we see leaders today ignoring reality because it doesn't fit their narrative? The scars of the Great Leap Forward are still etched into the soil of China. It's a reminder that the most dangerous weapon in the world isn't a nuclear missile. It's a lie that everyone is forced to believe. This is the human scar. Real history. No censorship. No lies. If you want to know the truth about the tyrants of the past, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started.